So I have been asked to do a little bit of a project. This will be a simple one. I've been asked to make 4 simple pencil boxes. I did a similar project for my fiance a month or so ago, but she wanted a big one. It was, 3 sections. It was like a foot wide. And all of her friends at work loved it, and they all wanted one. So as part of a giveaway that they're doing there at her work, they've asked me to make a couple smaller, simpler pencil pen cases. So that's what I'm going to be doing. These are just going to be simple boxes. I've got a couple pieces of wood here that I'm going to make 4 of these up with. One is this kind of cool piece of walnut that had this large bark inclusion in it. I removed and I cleaned out and I filled it with epoxy. Another scrap piece of walnut here that just has some really cool figure in it. Got a piece of ambrosia maple and a piece of hard maple. I'm going to have to start with cleaning up this epoxy and resawing these other pieces down and cutting them to size. I want to get them all roughly the same size as this piece. So we'll start there. So I've got everything rough sawn to about the same thickness, about a ½ inch on everything. I've also gone and saved the cutoffs because I'm going to take these and I'm going to send them through the drum sander and get them thickness down to 1/8 of an inch so that I can use them later on. But these are definitely going to come in useful. So I basically saved everything. The walnut I wasn't able to. The cutoff from that, I probably could have just sent it through the planer a couple times, but I wanted to start everything at the same thickness, so I went ahead and resawed it at the bandsaw. But as you can see, it's pretty paper thin, so that's not going to be very useful. But I do still have some older cutoffs from when I was doing some resawing for another project of walnut. So next step is to send them through the drum sander, get everything down to its final thickness, and then we'll start cutting some boxes. I have them down to size. They're just or 1/1000th under ½ an inch thick. I ran that through at 60 grit. So what I'm going to do now is I have some 80 grit, some 120, and some 180. I'm going to run them through. I'll get everything nice and smooth now through the drum sander before I cut it. That way I don't have to worry about sanding the inside of the boxes once they're together. So let's change this paper out. I got everything down to size and sanded up to 180. Because this piece here has this epoxy in it, you can see, hopefully you can see there, that still leaves a lot of scratch marks in the epoxy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to sand with the random orbit sander, and I'm going to bring this all the way up to 320. I normally wouldn't go that high, but with the epoxy and this being clear and wanting to be able to see through this, I need to go that high, at least on this piece. But I'm going to go ahead and get them all done. That way they're all even, they're all the same. Anyway, let's get going. so I've got them all cut to size, and you can kind of see the way I'm doing it. You're going to have a continuous wrap of the grain around. This is a pretty normal way of doing a box. You cut it from one piece, and what you end up getting is you get this wrap of grain all the way around, and this piece with the epoxy kind of perfectly demonstrates it. So as we close this up, that'll come together like so. Okay, so getting this dimension, this internal dimension exact, is actually pretty easy. All I've got here is 2 small pieces of wood, you can see, and all I'm going to do is get my total length just by doing that. And I'm going to, that way I can take them out, and then I've got my total dimension. So I'm going to throw a piece of tape on it, but you can get the general idea. I've got all the bottoms made. 2 of them are kind of dry fit in there right now. So this was the one with the slightly different dimension. All the rest turned out to be 4x4. So what I'm going to do now, these were just kind of rough taped together. I'm going to go through, those ones I just threw a piece on, but the way it'll actually make the seam look right is to stretch some of the thinner blue tape across the seam before I cover the whole thing. So I want the wider piece of tape on there just to contain any squeeze out, but these thinner pieces stretched out on it like this will actually provide the clamping force. So I'm going to do that for each joint, and then I'm going to flip them over and tape the insides, because I'm not going to be able to clean up any squeeze out on the inside very well. So I'm just going to tape it all up just to make cleanup easier once it's glued up. Wow, it is really pouring here. So these have cured overnight. All of the epoxy is nice and solid now. I have gone ahead and removed the tape from the inside of the boxes, but I have left the tape on the outside, and the reason for that is that I'm going to be cutting some miter keys into these. And leaving the tape on will just prevent chip out a little bit when I do that. The reason I'm going to put miter keys in these is because the miter joint itself isn't all that strong. It's a end grain to end grain glue joint, which isn't going to give you a lot of strength. So by cutting in some miter keys, we'll give it some cross grain glue joint surface. So I did save some cutoffs from when I resoled these boxes. So I've got some maple that I'm going to use for the keys on the walnut boxes, and some walnut that I'm going to use in the maple boxes. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm going to raise the blade so that it is just below the inside of that miter joint, so that when I make this cut, it will not cut through on the inside, but it will give us as deep of a cut as we can get on the outside. So we're, as you can see, at the top of that blade's travel, just a hair, I have to go down just a little bit more too, just a hair under the inside of that miter. Okay, so what I did there is I did all 4 corners on the bottom and all 4 corners on the top. I went ahead and used the same position on the sled without moving my fence either way, so that I could have symmetrical cuts from one side to the other. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and do the same 8 cuts on the other 3 boxes before I move this to a secondary position that'll give me another set top and bottom that I'll do. So that way everything will be symmetrical top and bottom. So case in point about why I'm putting in these miter keys and just how weak an end grain or miter glue up can be. Just that little bit of clamping pressure on the table saw jig on that sled was enough to pop this joint out. Easy fix, I'll just re-glue it, and then once those miter keys are in there, it'll be solid as a rock anyway. So little setback, but nothing major. At this point, the boxes are all cured. They sat overnight. Everything's good to go. The last thing that I need to do is just to trim off all of the excess on these keys, sand them back up, and apply some finish to them. And we'll wrap these up.